Evening. Well, today is a very big day for Nikon. Um the new Nikon Z9 has been announced with all the specs, and it's just not a camera. Actually, it's not just a camera, just another camera release. It's just we are talking about the next level stuff, the future of digital photography, and it's an evolution actually, based on the specs which Nikon put in Z9. And to be very honest, usually when Nikon announce any new camera, it's kind of exciting news. It's kind of it's always kind of a you know bring excitement and smile. But with Z9, I was shocked. I was literally shocked. Like after reading the specs, and I was like, is that really possible? That really it's possible? Let me tell you how it is possible and how Nikon made it possible. When back in the days when Nikon D3 was announced, it was a revolution, and it changed the whole camera industry. D3 basically was the first full frame who basically uh, made the foundation on which Nikon stands today. Nikon digital photography stands today, and now Z9 is then exactly repeating the history. It's building up the step on which the future of the Nikon is going to stand. How? Let me take you for a quick and brief description how it's going to be. The whole Z9 is all about power and speed. That's a two thing, Nikon Z9. Power and speed. The power, when it comes to power, we are talking about megapixel, we are talking about autofocus, we are talking about heat dissipation, we are talking about uh, the large buffer, deeper buffer, and everything. So that's the power. And when it comes to speed, we are talking about 120 frames per second JPEG with each JPEG 11 megapixel. We are talking about 20 frames per second RAW plus JPEG, uncompressed. So these are the numbers which is speaks for itself. And also when it comes to speed, we are talking about not one, not two, not three, nine type of object tracking system into a camera which can easily track train, aeroplane, human body, bike, motorcycle, like bike, motorcycle, same thing, I mean car, birds, human, human like face, eye, half body, and bird like whole body and the beak and the eye of the bird. So all these things are there for the Z9. But to be very honest, I'm not surprised when with the photography specs, because photography specs are just like it has a Z7 II or D850. What stunned me is the video part. Like you're talking about 8K, not 10 minutes, not 20 minutes, not 30 minutes. You're talking about two or more than 2 hours. 8K at 30 frames per second for 125 minutes. Are you kidding me? Who does that? Who make 2 hours of straight 8K video? Who do that? I mean, that's insane. And if I'm talking about 8K 60p, I just read somewhere it's like 8K for 1 hour, 8K 60p for 1 hour, because they have to cut down because it generates too much heat. That's why they have to cut down the recording limit. There's a cap for that. But for 8K 30p, 125 minutes. That's insane. And then we're talking about 4K up to 120p. That's another insane thing. So nine types of object tracking system, 45 megapixel, 8K 30p for 125 minutes, 1000 frames for RAW plus JPEG, unlimited shooting, and then you're talking about 120 frames per second JPEG shoot, each 11 megapixel. And by the way, that if you think that 11 megapixel is small, might keep in mind that you are uploading 2 megapixel images on Facebook. All of my Facebook or Flickr or 500px or upic.com images, all of my images are exported regardless of megapixel, how many megapixel I shoot. All of my export images are either 8 megapixel or 12 megapixel because I shoot with D3s, I shoot with D700, so my final output is 12 megapixel. Or sometimes I shoot at export images at 8 megapixel. So imagine you are having 120 frames in 1 second of each of them 11 megapixel. So if you are bird action or wildlife photographer, bird, animal, or sports action, wildlife or photojournalist photographer, and you need that one very fine moment where there's uh, the bird is going to hit, the water, or the the ball is going to hit to the bat in cricket, or you're talking about the athlete is going to jump and is about to hit the ground. That those kind of moments where you need the precise frame to capture. That's where these 120 frames per second is going to be useful. And I'm telling you, it's going to be amazing when you're going to use this feature. 120 frames per second, each of them 11 megapixel, which gives you a lot of details, a lot of details, a lot of details. And I am just, let's compare with Z9 with its competitor, which R3, Canon R3, and Sony A1. So Sony A1 gives you 50 megapixel at 30 frames per second, but keep in mind that those 30 frames per second are compressed raw. If you are going to shoot uncompressed, you cannot get 30 frames per second. You are going to have less frames. Yep, that's a caveat. And in Nikon, you get 20 frames per second full RAW plus JPEG, uncompressed. So that's high quality JPEG and uncompressed RAW. So that's the thing. And when it comes to Canon R3, that's also I don't know much about Canon. I believe it's 20 frames or 30 frames, something like that, but they are 24 megapixel. So Canon basically is having less information to cook. So I'm not surprised with their high frames per second. But right now, Nikon do that 20 frames per second, uncompressed RAW, and high quality JPEG. Now the whole idea that Z9 is basically having two things which make it a superpower, like it's a bomb, like atom bomb. It's literally like that. The two things which make Z9 superior in compared to uh, A1, Sony A1, and Canon R5. And what's two things are? Is its sensor and its faster readout time, faster scan rate, and second is X-Speed 7 processor. X-Speed 7 processor is basic. I'll come later on to the sensor because sensor requires more detail to discuss. The X-Speed 7 processor is just like M1 chip. It processes information so fast that the 45 megapixel output is spitting out from the sensor. The X-Speed 7 processor have processed it so fast that you are having zero rolling shutter effect. That's why there is no mechanical shutter in Z9 because they don't need it. Because normally what happens in electronic shutter, you are having rolling shutter effect. Like if the person is playing a golf and it's swinging the stick is going to have a curve because of the rolling shutter effect. Or if you're shooting a helicopter, the propeller is going to be like curvy instead of straight because of the rolling shutter effect. What happening in Z9 is the sensor scan rate it's so fast that it's capturing 20 times in a second and it spit out so fast to a processor where processor handles that information and process it so much quickly that you won't be able to have transition to get the curve effect or the rolling shutter effect. It's happening so fast, and like I said, it's just like what you see in Apple MacBook and with the M1 processor, they process just like this, like system on a chip. This is exactly what happens in Z9. It's just like everything built on the sensor. Stack sensor with faster readout, with deeper buffer, which spits out the information quickly to the processor, XP7, which quickly process it and dumping into the memory card. So that's why they don't need mechanical shutter. By the way, on the internet, if you see the Z9 image with sensor covered with a shutter, it's not shutter. It's basically the protection of for the sensor to avoid dust and or stuff like that. It's not the shutter. It's not the shutter. There is no shutter in Z9. So that's the stunning part. And if someone says that, oh, Nikon is using Sony sensor, well, of course, okay, maybe it's a Sony sensor. Then why Sony is not used that technology in A1? And even if they used it in an A1, why they are not able to have uncompressed RAW at 30 frames per second, like Nikon? Nikon did. They sacrificed on high frames per second, but they provided the uncompressed RAW in Z9, whereas Sony, they compromise on the quality by pushing you to get compressed RAW at 30 frames per second, which also going to be fill up quickly their buffer. So you have to wait until the buffer get clear. In Z9, it's not like that. You are going to have 1,000 shots with uncompressed RAW with high quality JPEG at 20 frames per second with 45 megapixel. So which sounds better for you? See, I always talk about facts and numbers. It's not like I'm just talking like an Nikon fanboy. No, I'm just comparing facts to fact. That's how it is. Canon R3 has a 24 megapixel, so its sensor is basically stack sensor is basically having less information to process, unlike Nikon. Nikon has 45 megapixel. Now, let me compare the Nikon Z9 fastest scan rate performance, and it's having zero uh, rolling shutter effect on the images in compared to Sony A7S3. When Sony A7S3 was announced, what happened was, okay, it was announced with having the least rolling shutter effect, and people were making the 4K video, making the camera left and right, shooting the pole and the lights, which having zero or very less rolling shutter effect, very less, no doubt about that. But of course, because it was a stack sensor and it was having 12 megapixel. So 12 megapixel means that you are having less information to process, to cook, to get out from the sensor and to cook and dump into the memory card. 12 megapixel. Here right now in Nikon Z9 we are talking about 45 megapixel. It means not one, not three, not one, not twice, not three, four times, almost four times the information. Four times the information of what A7S3 was having. In Z9 we are having four times the information, and we are still able to have zero lagging in the shutter level. Rolling shutter effect, it's zero. So which one sounds better? Nikon or Sony or Canon? See, the specs which Z9 having, I've never seen this kind of specs in any of the latest camera which is announced from the different camera companies. Now let's talk about video. Before I jump into the video section, let me clear one thing. When Sony introduced the A7 series, A7S, A7R, and A7, especially A7, when it was first announced, it was promoted as a compact camera with having the same DSLR level quality, compact camera and all this stuff, having less weight, and people were drooling for it and they went like crazy, which is fine. That's understood. Okay, it was at that point it was part of the marketing stuff, and it was cashed by Sony very well. Now you see, and it was no doubt this, it was smaller camera, lightweight, compact camera, full frame, no doubt about that. Now fast forward, A1, Sony A7 S3, and Sony A7R. Sorry, A7 IV. These three camera bodies. When these three camera bodies were announced, all of these three were having beefier and bulkier bodies. Why? Because of 4K requirement. So the 4K requirement basically pushed Sony to again go against their policy and make bulkier cameras, make heavier cameras, make beefier cameras, so they can dissipate more heat because of the 4K requirement. Look what happened with Canon R5. Canon R5 did the same thing. They put 8K at, I don't know, 24p or 30p, and it starts getting heat up. Why? Because it has so much information to cook in a smaller package. That's why it start getting heat after 20 minutes, which was further enhanced by software update. The cap was removed, and then you are having longer recording, because but it's getting heat up. Why? Because of the compact physical body of the camera. When I first saw the image of the Z9, I immediately know that Nikon is going something big. There is no way Nikon is stupid enough to make a bigger mirrorless camera, because everybody thinks that mirrorless is all about compact cameras, because the mirror is removed, so the size of the camera is reduced, so it has any more feature, blah blah blah. It's not like that. It's not like that. Every camera has to go through certain kind of sacrifices, certain kind of compromises. Z9 is about zero compromise. You are getting 8K 30p for 125 minutes. It's more than 2 hours. Who do that? Which camera company having 8K for more than 2 hours? Nikon is the first camera. Z9 is the first camera in history to make more than 2 hours. And I was reading it somewhere in the internet, 8K at 60p is 1 hour cap, because it's having too much information to cook. So still with bigger body, like full professional with a built-in vertical grip body, it's still having too much heat at 60p, 8K. So at 4K, 120p, because it can handle that big body, can handle that. That's why Nikon is not stupid. Canon is not stupid. They are making bigger bodies because they know they need the bigger bodies to dissipate heat for 4K and 8K videos. Canon cannot make 8K because of 24 megapixel sensor in R3. Nikon passes Canon and having 8K at 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second and 4K with 120 frames per second and the bigger body. Of course, when it comes to screen, Canon R3 has advantage. It has fully articulated screen, unlike Sony A1. But Nikon has an edge over Sony A1. It has four-way tilted screen, like Fujifilm and Pentax. So it's still better than Sony A1. So these are the things which make Nikon Z9 far more better choice than any other camera. But I am not, maybe I sound like a Nikon fanboy, which I am, but I am talking with facts and figures, which I challenge Canon user and Sony users to address. If you know the system, please come and address. I'm more than happy to answer you. So Z9 is damn. It's damn. And I am blown away with the performance. I was planning to go for Z6 too, and after reading the specs, I just cancelled my plan. I'm no more going with Z6 too. I will be going with Z9. Fine, fully final. I know it's gonna be hell expensive for me, and I have to sell out a lot of stuff, including my kidney. I'm just kidding, but I will be going for Z9. That's for sure. my next camera is going to be Z9. And I was waiting that, I was thinking to go for D6. And I was like, man, should I wait? But no, not anymore. No more compromises. Z9 is all that I need. It's all about power and speed. And it's one camera using which I can do anything. And I mean anything. So I'm going to wrap up this video uh, with this final conclusion that uh, everybody was, cursing Nikon, that they were lacking behind. They have no product to inspire, no product to be proud of. But and Nikon was taking everything, you know, every criticism on themselves. And with Z9, they clean the slate. They clean the slate and they say, okay, now tell me what you want. We have everything in Z9. Everything. I am so proud on Nikon to make Z9 possible for us. Thank you so much, Nikon, and we're really thankful to you for the rest of our life. After D3 and after D700, this is the product that I was really proud for, D850. But you surpassed all of that, happiness that I have with D3, D700, and D850. You surpassed all of that happiness with Z9. I am really proud on you, Nikon. Thank you for making Z9, and I just can't wait to get one for myself. And I'll catch you guys in some other video. Till then, later.